So I wasn't supposed to be up here today. So this is going to come across very raw and very real. I've been up since 3 o'clock this morning, praying and asking God, what do He want me to share with you? And it's, as I was talking to Woody earlier, this is real emotional for me because I feel it. I'm a very empathetic person. One of my strongest qualities as an attorney is empathy, being able to take on my clients' struggles, how they feel, and then being able to project that in the courtroom. But it's also a weakness in that it consumes me at times, wearing me down, just struggling through all of that. So I want to share a journey with you. This has been a hard year. As I've reflected, and you know, when I look back, I can see God was already starting to move in me what I'm supposed to talk about today. He was already doing it probably Tuesday of this last week, because things started stirring inside of me, and I started carrying things. And when I carry things, they kind of sit on my stomach. So even though I can portray myself well, my stomach just kind of turns. When I eat things, they just don't set well. I toss and turn at night, not really. Sometimes my stomach actually knows it, or my gut actually knows it before I'm even aware of it. So, here goes. Like I said, this has been a hard year. For me, not really personally, but just with the people that I've been around, the people that I've been closest to, and struggling and watching them struggle. I think it started right around the first of the year when one of my closest friends started to react badly, and fear, watching something that I never thought would actually possibly happen, is that he would actually walk away from God, from this group, from all the things that he had experienced for years of walking with him closely, talking to him daily, and seeing all the ugliness just rise up inside of him. And I carried that burden for a good month and a half until we finally made it through it together. But it required me to take time and to meet him one-on-one and to talk and just work through all of that together. But yeah, I have to admit, it took a toll on me. It really did. I watch weekly. In fact, it's almost daily that I see somebody walking away from what they've been given. You know, if you were here last week, I talked about what are you doing with what you've been given? How do you measure up? Who are we measuring ourselves up against? And then came out of that and talking about who we are in Christ. And walking out of here last week was like one of those mountaintops that I go through. One of those mountaintops when I feel as when I stand up, I'm actually speaking for God. And then there are those times when I feel like I'm living on whispers of yesterday. and watching my brothers go through so many things in these past few months. It's always been that way, but maybe I think recently it's because it's the ones that are closest to me, the ones that know me well and that I know well, and watching them struggle through stuff. I have a friend who I've known for years. His wife just has thrown in the towel and walked out. And when she was moved toward by the people in the church with whom she was serving, she didn't want to accept it. She didn't want to hear it. And she just walks away. I got another friend a couple of weeks ago that was sitting down, and we were talking, and he just talks about he's so distant from God and how he's struggling, and honestly didn't even recognize it until he told us. I got another friend who right now is really struggling with disappointing God and disappointing us, and sitting in a place where he's just crying. And so, how could this happen? How could I have lost the connection? Where did I turn and go the wrong way? And yet I've seen God move incredibly in all of these people's lives. Got another friend, his wife had some results come back finally yesterday, but they thought it was some type of cancer. They're young and just struggling through that. And so I carry this. And I know the Bible says we're supposed to cast all of our cares on him. He cares for me. And I know that. And that's nice stuff to know. But how do I do that? How do I get into the place where I go from a spiritual high to a place where I just want to crawl under a tree and die? You been there? Maybe some of you are there now. If you haven't been there, you will be. It will happen to all of us, no matter where we are, no matter who we're connected with. We will all go through those places. So, I want to read your story. And I want to tell you how this has been working on me since this morning. Now, Ahab told Jezebel everything Elijah had done and how he killed all the prophets with a sword. So Jezebel sent a messenger to Elijah to say, "May the gods deal with me, be it ever so severely, if by this time tomorrow I do not make your life like one of them." Elijah was afraid and ran for his life. When he came to Beersheba in Judah, he left his servant there while he himself went a day's journey into the wilderness. He came to a broom bush, sat down under it, and prayed that he might die. "I have had enough, Lord." He said, "Take my life. I am no better than my ancestors." Then he lay down under the bush and fell asleep. All at once, an angel touched him and said, "Get up and eat." He looked around, and there by his head was some baked bread over hot coals and a jar of water. He ate and drank and then lay back down. The angel of the Lord came back a second time and touched him and said, "Get up and eat, for the journey is too much for you." So he got up and ate and drank. Strengthened by that food, he traveled 40 days and 40 nights until he reached Horeb, the mountain of God. Then he went into a cave and spent the night. And the word of the Lord came to him. What are you doing? What are you doing here, Elijah? So I come to that place and I say, God, the journey is too hard for me. The journey is too hard. This is hard doing this for you. This is hard living a life that is so contrary to everything that the world has to say. This life that I live, it's so hard to carry on when so many people around me are struggling. God, this is too hard for me. And I find that I want to go into those places where I want to do just like Elijah said. I want to lay down and give up and pray, God, just take me now. I'm just too tired to go on. And I watch my brothers move through all of these struggles and the issues, and I hurt down deep inside for them. And I can't fix it. So as an attorney, I had people coming in all the time and their lives are a disaster, and they bring me all the information and I can stay disconnected from that. And my statement to them all the time is, I can't take care of what you did, but I can fix it from here forward. We can do this together. And when they trust me, and when we do this together, they're no longer carrying that burden. They've shifted it off of themselves and onto me, and I'm very capable of taking care of their problems. But here, when we're looking at the God stuff, when we're dealing with issues and problems and marriages and struggles, I can't fix that. And so that burden sits on me. What do I do? How can I keep going on? And I love this passage. I love these verses. And I want to tell you why. Because that was chapter 19 in Kings. If you go back to chapter 18, Elijah has just come off of a huge God experience, unlike anything that he ever had in his life. He had just come off of that place where he had confronted all of the prophets of Baal. They had built these two altars. The prophets of Baal had yelled and screamed and prayed for their God to come down and devour their sacrifice all day, even to the point of cutting themselves, and yet nothing happened. And Elijah simply asked the men to come in and pour barrels and barrels of water over top of the sacrifice. It had not rained for the longest time. And Elijah had been a part of that, saying to the king, it will not rain. And all of this is coming to a head right there on that mountain. And Elijah sits back almost in a cocky way and says, God, let me see what you can do. Come down and show them who you really are. And the fire from heaven comes down and devours the entire offering and drinks up all of the water and destroys the altar. And then all of the prophets of Baal are killed. And so Elijah has just come off of this incredible experience with God. And yet in the very next chapter, he's under the tree saying, God, I can't go on any longer. I can't do it any longer. And the key for me right here, the thing that I've learned for the first time, is how God responded, what the angel of the Lord actually did for Elijah. Because, if you're struggling, my tendency is to come up next to you and say, do you not remember everything that God has done in your life? What is wrong with you? You need to put on your big panties and get back in the game. That would be a normal response from me. Probably, if you were walking with a brother, you would say the same thing. But what I noticed is that the angel of the Lord came, and in response to Elijah saying, I just want to die, the angel brought him food and water, and then came back and brought him food and water and said, you just need to rest. This journey is too hard for you. And I thought, maybe things need to change the way that I approach my brothers. Maybe things need to change as I watch them struggle through this hard time, while I watch them struggle through whether or not God's even there. Instead of saying, don't you remember? Maybe I just need to take them to lunch and show them love and compassion, just like God did to Elijah. Maybe I need to approach this in a different way. Maybe what they need is nourishment for the journey. Someone who will walk with them for a while. Someone who will say, it'll be all right. Yeah, you screwed up, but it's okay. We can get through this together. The Bible constantly talks about encouraging one another, spurring one another on toward good deeds, and walking this walk together. And I've realized with my brothers that are struggling that the one thing that I didn't do is walk away. The one thing that I have not done is sit there and criticize them. The one thing that I have done is to walk with them and show them compassion and tell them, I love you unconditionally. So I think in the middle of all of this, God is teaching me, and I think He wants to teach you the same thing. I've had a couple of friends who've made bad decisions with their marriages. Have another friend who only a couple weeks ago almost walked away from a group that I'm in. And when that happens, I feel overwhelming love and compassion for them that I don't normally show. And I think God wants to change our perspective. Why do people walk away from God? It's too hard. The journey's too hard. How do we do this better? How do we walk along with them through this? How do we carry each other's burdens? How do we move through the struggles that we're all going to have? We're all going to be under that broom tree one day. And I know for me, I want men to be bringing me food and saying, hey, rest up, nourish yourself. This journey is too hard for you. But we can do this together. So, that's where I am. That's my issues, my struggles this morning, which I think God has got me in a perfect place to be able to stand up here and talk about it. I hope that you relate to this. When he responds to God, when he's standing outside of the mountain, when God asks him, why are you here? He says, I've been very zealous for the Lord God Almighty. The Israelites have rejected your covenant, torn down your altars, and put your prophets to death with the sword. I am the only one left, and now they are trying to kill me too. Without somebody walking along with me, without somebody walking along with you in the middle of all of this, you'll go to the same place. I'm all alone, and the journey is too hard for me. So today, questions are going to be pretty simple. Do you feel discouraged, beat up, depleted, exhausted, and feel as though you can't go on? Question number one, where are you with God? Are you living in the moment of feeling the power and the presence of God in your life, or are you living on whispers of yesterday? Talk about where you are. Second question. God tells us to encourage one another, to spur one another on, to carry one another's burdens. Today, how can you encourage someone else? What steps can you take to say one encouraging thing a day to someone who needs it this next week? Pray for each other at the table. Encourage one another. Spur one another on. Draw closer together. Build those bonds that we were meant to build. Because we have one common factor. We're all in different places, but we have one common factor. We're here on a Saturday morning at 7:30 when most people are asleep still to move closer to God. So how do we do that? Let's start with these steps. Let's move into this. Put it all out there. If you're in a good place, then let's celebrate that. If you're struggling and you're just depleted and you feel like you're all alone, let's encourage one another in that. And let's move into a place where we operate off of that motto, no man left behind. Your burdens are my burdens. We do this together. You're not alone. And you don't have to do this on your own. Okay? If you read the story, and I would encourage you, go and read chapter 18 and chapter 19 of 1 Kings. Watch the progression of Elijah. Watch where he goes. A couple things I want to point out. And this is what it said. Elijah was afraid and he ran for his life. When he came to Beersheba in Judah, he left his servant there. So Elijah, going into the place where he was, going to the place where the next scene reaches him under the tree by himself, saying, God, let me die. He left the only one that was walking with him behind. We were never meant to do this alone. That's an important principle that you need to take away from that. He did this on his own. God showed up in a powerful way for Elijah. And I don't want you to think from the start of my talk today that I'm sitting in this. I know I'm supposed to feel it because I can emotionally share that with you. See, one thing I know. One thing I know is just what Elijah experienced. The Lord said, go out and stand on the mountain in the presence of the Lord, for the Lord is about to pass by. There was a great and powerful wind that tore the mountains apart and shattered the rocks before the Lord, but the Lord was not in the wind. After the wind was an earthquake, but the Lord was not in the earthquake. After the earthquake came a fire, but the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire came a gentle whisper. And when Elijah heard it, he pulled his cloak over his face and went out and stood at the mouth of the cave. Then a voice came to him saying, what are you doing here, Elijah? So what do you do when you hear that voice and you know it's speaking to you, and it's that soft voice that God speaks to us so often, and it says, what are you doing here? How'd you get here? Why are you doing this on your own? Why did you not bring someone along on the journey with you? What are you doing here, Elijah? I'll go to Revelation, what Jesus said to the church of Ephesus. He's talked about the church of Ephesus, but this is what he said. Remember the height from which you have fallen. Repent and do the things that you did at first. When you find yourself in that place of wanting to run and wanting to die and saying, God, this journey is too hard for me, take some time. Go to a place where you can hear that whisper, that still small voice. And when you feel like you can't do this alone, do what Jesus said to the church of Ephesus. Realize how far you have fallen and go back and do the things you did at first. You need to go find your first love. Go back and find your first love. And take someone along on the journey. Do not do this on your own.